There are nights when the earth seems to breathe slower, when the stars shimmer with a kind of distant sorrow, as if they too remember something we have forgotten. In that quiet, if you listen closely enough, you might hear it, the faint murmur of forgotten worlds. The ghosts of civilizations that once shaped mountains and rivers to their will, that once painted their dreams on stone and clay, now lost to sand, jungle, and sea. These are not small tribes fading quietly into obscurity. They were mighty cultures, vast and radiant, whose disappearance feels as sudden as the extinguishing of flame. One day they were there, thriving, vibrant, alive. The next, they were gone, leaving behind only ruins, whispers, and questions that still haunt the corridors of history. Imagine standing at the edge of such a place. A wind drifts over the remains of what was once a city, a market square buried under centuries of soil, a temple where no prayers have been spoken in 1,000 years. The air carries a strange stillness, a peace that feels too deep, as though time itself holds its breath here. Beneath your feet lies the weight of uncounted stories, lives that once burned bright, dreams that reached toward eternity, all dissolved into dust. You can almost hear them in the rhythm of the wind, the echo of footsteps, the laughter of children, the hum of distant music now silenced by the endless turning of the earth. History tells us of empires and kings, of triumphs and wars, of golden ages followed by decline. But these vanished civilizations did not simply fade through conquest or decay. They disappeared overnight. Whole cities emptied, entire peoples gone without trace or warning. It is this suddenness that chills the imagination, that makes even the most rational mind pause in wonder. How can thousands of souls vanish so completely that only their shadows remain in legend? Was it the wrath of nature, a shifting of the earth, a storm, or a drought that drove them away? Or did something deeper, more mysterious, sweep across their world, a silence that no scholar can name? The truth is we don't fully know, and perhaps that's what makes these lost civilizations so compelling. In every ruin, there's a tension between what we can measure and what we can only feel. Archaeologists can count the bricks, date the bones, analyze the patterns, but the moment of disappearance, the heartbeat of that loss, belongs to mystery. It belongs to the space between fact and dream, between history and myth. And it is in that space that the imagination wanders freely, searching for meaning in the dust. The world has always been a tapestry of rise and fall. Yet when we speak of these vanished cultures, the ones that seem to dissolve overnight, we sense something different, something uncanny. It is as if time itself turned a page too quickly, skipping a chapter we were never meant to lose. Their cities, once alive with trade and celebration, now lie quiet under layers of sand or vines. Their temples, built for gods whose names no one remembers, gaze skyward through broken roofs. Their writing, carved carefully into stone, sits unreadable, silent scripts of vanished voices. Still, even in disappearance, they left behind beauty. The earth holds their memory tenderly, keeping fragments for us to find. A single bead, a piece of pottery, the faint outline of a road that once led to a capital. These remnants are like echoes in the dark, each one reminding us that nothing truly vanishes without leaving a trace. And perhaps, on some deeper level, their stories are not lost at all. They're simply waiting for us to listen again. If you close your eyes, you might imagine them as they were. Torches flickering along city walls. Merchants calling out under awnings of woven cloth. Children chasing each other through narrow streets. Priests chanting before stone idols as dawn rises over the horizon. The world was alive, and then silence. The fires went out, and centuries passed. What happened? Where did they go? Did they walk away willingly, guided by prophecy or fear? Or were they swept into oblivion by forces beyond comprehension? Forces that remind us how fragile even the greatest civilizations truly are? Perhaps that fragility is what makes their stories so strangely comforting. For in their disappearance, we see a reflection of our own impermanence. The same forces that built them, curiosity, ambition, creativity, live within us. And the same silence that took them will one day come for us as well. But within that realization lies peace. Because to be part of the endless cycle of creation and disappearance is to be part of something vast and eternal, just as they once were. These lost worlds call to us not through words, but through emotion. The quiet awe of standing before ruins, the shiver that runs through you when you touch a wall built by hands long turned to dust. They remind us that progress does not always mean permanence. That memory, not stone, is the true monument of humankind. When we uncover their relics, we are not resurrecting the past. We are continuing it, carrying its essence forward in thought and wonder. So as night deepens, and your mind drifts between wakefulness and dreams, imagine that you are walking through the corridors of time. Each step brings you closer to a civilization that vanished as mysteriously as it appeared. The desert may have swallowed one. The jungle may have claimed another. The ocean may have taken the rest. But their stories remain, woven into the soul of the earth, pulsing softly beneath the quiet of stars. And now, the journey begins. We travel first to the endless sands of Arabia, where a great city once stood, glittering with wealth, shining with pride. A city so grand that poets called it the Atlantis of the desert. Tonight, we will listen for its echo beneath the dunes, where the wind still whispers its name. Ubar, the city swallowed by sand and time, waiting for its story to be told once more. In the endless expanse of the Arabian desert, where golden dunes ripple like frozen waves, there once stood a city that glimmered beneath the sun. A city known in whispers and scripture as Iram of the Pillars. Some called it Ubar, others simply the Atlantis of Arabia. For centuries, it existed only in legend, a phantom city said to have been buried by the wrath of God or swallowed by the sands overnight. Travelers spoke of its towers piercing the horizon, of its wealth beyond imagining, and of its people whose pride reached higher than their minarets. Yet when scholars and explorers searched for it, they found only silence, the empty breath of the desert, the hiss of wind over dunes that concealed a forgotten world. The story of Ubar begins in the cradle of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, the largest continuous sand desert on Earth. For thousands of years, caravans crossed this desolate sea of sand, carrying incense, myrrh, spices, and silk. The incense route was a lifeline of ancient trade, connecting Arabia to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. In the heart of this network, Ubar was said to have flourished, a city of great merchants, mystics, and kings who prospered under the blazing sun. They built tall pillars that gleamed like ivory, and their streets were lined with goods from distant lands. But, like a mirage shimmering in the heat, the line between history and myth is hard to see. Was Ubar truly a city of men, or a symbol, a parable about arrogance and divine retribution? Ancient texts describe Iram as a place of wonder and corruption. The Quran tells of the people of Ad, whose wealth and pride knew no bounds. They defied the warnings of their prophet, Hud, and built monumental structures to glorify themselves instead of their creator. According to the story, their punishment came swiftly. A great windstorm rose, furious, unrelenting, and for 7 nights and 8 days, it scoured the land until nothing was left. The people of Ad were buried beneath the sands, their mighty city erased from the earth. Whether one reads this as myth or history, the imagery is haunting. Towers crumbling into dunes, laughter silenced beneath an ocean of dust, a civilization vanishing overnight. For generations, Ubar remained a legend, its existence dismissed by historians and explorers alike. Yet the desert has a way of guarding its secrets, waiting for patient hands to listen. In the early 1990s, modern technology, specifically satellite imaging, revealed something extraordinary. Researchers from NASA and archaeologists working together noticed faint lines across the desert, like scars in the sand. These lines were not random. They were ancient caravan routes, converging on a single point. Beneath that point, near a site called Shizr in Oman, lay the remnants of a buried fortress. When excavations began, they found collapsed stone towers, pottery shards, and evidence of ancient trade. The sands had indeed hidden something real, a lost settlement that matched the ancient descriptions of Ubar. As excavators brushed away the dust of centuries, a picture began to form. Ubar, or whatever its true name was, had been built atop a natural limestone cavern. Over time, as the city expanded and heavy structures were built, the ground beneath it weakened. Eventually, it gave way, swallowing part of the city into a vast sinkhole. The collapse would have been catastrophic, transforming a thriving oasis into a deadly chasm. In the aftermath, survivors may have fled, and the desert slowly reclaimed what remained. From a geological perspective, it was a tragedy of nature. Yet to those who lived it, it must have felt like divine punishment, an act of gods turning paradise to dust. The discovery of Ubar captured the world's imagination. Newspapers called it the lost city of Arabia, and some hailed it as proof that myth and history are often threads of the same fabric. But the sands guard their truths carefully. Even today, debate continues. Was the site truly the legendary Iram, or merely one of many forgotten trading posts along the incense road? Archaeologists tread carefully between faith and evidence, between what can be touched and what can only be felt. But perhaps that is the beauty of Ubar. It exists in both worlds. It is real enough to touch and mysterious enough to dream about. Imagine it as it once was. Caravans approaching from the horizon, their camels laden with frankincense and gold. The scent of resin and spice thick in the air. The walls of Ubar rising from the desert like a mirage that somehow took form. Within those walls, merchants bartered under canopies of woven cloth. Musicians played flutes made of bone, and lamps flickered in the night. This was a city that glowed in the heart of the desert, a jewel of trade, faith, and power. And then, in one terrible moment, it was gone. The laughter, the music, the life, all swallowed by sand and silence. To stand at the site today is to feel the weight of time pressing in from all sides. The dunes shift constantly, reshaping the landscape as if erasing and rewriting history every few hours. The remains of towers jut from the earth like broken teeth, the edges softened by centuries of wind. There is no sound except the soft sigh of the breeze. Yet that silence feels alive, as if the desert remembers. When the sun dips low and the horizon blurs, one might even imagine the faint outlines of the lost city shimmering in the distance, rising for a moment before fading again into gold and shadow. Ubar's mystery endures not simply because it vanished, but because of what it represents, the fine line between greatness and hubris, between permanence and impermanence. It reminds us that every civilization believes it will last forever, that its walls and towers will stand the test of time. Yet the earth is patient. It reclaims everything, turning stone to dust and dust to memory. Ubar's fall was not just a physical collapse. It was a spiritual lesson etched into the sands of history. The desert may appear lifeless, but beneath it lies an eternal archive of human ambition, buried cities, forgotten faiths, and stories waiting to be rediscovered. As the winds continue to shape the dunes, they whisper across the bones of the past. The story of Ubar drifts like incense on the night air, a fragrance of mystery and truth intertwined. And as we leave this city beneath the sands, the path ahead beckons us further into the unknown. Beyond the desert lies another kind of wilderness, one not of sand, but of jungle, a place where stone temples sleep under a canopy of leaves, and where another civilization, as brilliant as it was mysterious, vanished without a trace. The journey continues, from the silent dunes of Arabia to the deep green heart of Central America, Where the jungle hides the ghost cities of the Maya. Another world, another enigma, another whisper of forgotten time. In the heart of the dense Central American jungle, where humidity hangs heavy and vines twist like serpents around ancient stone, the whispers of a lost civilization linger among the trees. Here, beneath the emerald canopy of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize, lie the remnants of a world once alive with knowledge, faith, and power. The world of the Maya. Their temples still pierce the jungle sky. Their pyramids rise above seas of green, and their glyphs remain carved into stone, speaking in a language of mystery. But the people who built these wonders are gone. Cities that once pulsed with life fell silent centuries ago, as if the jungle itself inhaled and swallowed them whole. The Maya were not a single people, but a network of kingdoms, each city-state ruled by its own kings, priests, and dynasties. They were astronomers and architects, mathematicians and poets. They mapped the heavens, tracked the movements of Venus, and calculated solar eclipses with uncanny precision. They built towering temples aligned to the stars, each step carved with purpose, each wall adorned with the rhythm of their calendar. Their art was vivid, their rituals elaborate, their cities immense. From Tikal to Palenque, from Copan to Calakmul, the Maya world stretched across mountains and plains, a constellation of brilliance in the pre-Columbian night. And yet, around the 9th century, something changed. In less than a few generations, the great Maya cities were abandoned. Their plazas emptied, their temples crumbled, and the forest began its slow reclamation. The air that once echoed with chants and drums grew silent, filled only with the hum of insects and the cry of distant birds. No foreign conqueror swept through their lands. No single disaster is recorded. They simply vanished, one city after another, leaving behind a question that has haunted historians and dreamers for centuries. Why did the Maya civilization collapse? Archaeologists have offered many theories, each as compelling as it is incomplete. Some point to environmental collapse, a chain reaction of droughts that drained rivers and withered crops. As the population grew, so did their need for resources. Trees were cut for temples, for cooking fires, for expansion. Without the forest to hold the soil, erosion followed. The climate shifted. Rain ceased. The people faced hunger, thirst, and unrest. Inscriptions from the final centuries hint at wars and struggles between rival kings, conflicts that fractured the unity of their cities. As resources dwindled, competition turned to chaos, and chaos turned to flight. Others see something deeper, a spiritual or societal unraveling. The Maya world was steeped in religion. Every harvest, every war, every sunrise tied to the will of gods who demanded balance. When the rain stopped, perhaps they saw it not as a natural disaster, but a cosmic one. Priests may have performed desperate rituals, blood sacrifices to restore harmony between heaven and earth. But when the gods remained silent, faith may have faltered. The divine rhythm that guided their world broke, and without it, the foundation of their civilization trembled. Yet despite the mystery, the Maya never truly vanished. Their descendants live on throughout Central America, in villages and cities, speaking modern dialects of the ancient tongue, carrying with them the echoes of their ancestors. The Maya did not disappear, so much as transform. What was lost was not the people, but the golden thread that connected their cities, their kings, and their divine order. The jungle took back what stone could not protect, wrapping its green fingers around the monuments of time, until even memory became overgrown. To walk through a Maya city today is to step into two worlds at once, the living and the lost. The air hums with the sound of cicadas. The scent of wet earth and moss fills the lungs. Sunlight filters through leaves, painting dappled patterns across the faces of gods carved in stone. It feels as though the jungle itself guards these places, protecting them from the noise of modern time. At Tikal, you can climb the steep stairways of Temple 4 and look out across an ocean of green, where the tops of other pyramids emerge like islands through the mist. It is breathtaking and humbling. To stand among such ruins is to feel the pulse of something eternal, yet fragile. Their achievements were staggering. The Maya created one of the most sophisticated writing systems of the ancient world. Their calendar, often misunderstood by popular culture, was not a doomsday prophecy, but a poetic vision of time. Cyclical, infinite, sacred. They saw existence as a dance between worlds. The realm of the living, the underworld, and the heavens, each woven together by ritual and sacrifice. Death was not an ending, but a transition, a journey through layers of time and space. Perhaps it is fitting, then, that their civilization, too, did not simply die, but crossed into another form of existence, hidden beneath the jungle canopy, suspended between history and legend. The sound of the jungle at night carries an eerie familiarity, as if the forest still remembers. When thunder rolls over the ancient temples, it feels like the echo of drums. When rain falls against the stones, it sounds like whispers, soft, rhythmic, almost musical. Some say you can feel their presence here, not as ghosts, but as guardians. The Maya believed that every stone, every tree, every star had spirit, and that nothing ever truly disappeared. In that sense, their world continues, not in ruins or relics, but in the quiet continuity of nature itself. There is a peculiar comfort in their story. The Maya remind us that even the most advanced societies are bound to the earth they inhabit. They remind us that knowledge alone cannot protect us from imbalance. When they fell, the jungle returned, indifferent and patient. But perhaps the earth was not their enemy. Perhaps it was simply reclaiming what was always hers. And in that reclamation, the Maya became eternal, woven into the soil, the rain, and the wind that still moves through their cities. Today, archaeologists and explorers continue to uncover new sites, whole cities hidden beneath the forest, mapped by lasers that cut through the canopy. Each discovery adds another verse to the unfinished song of the Maya. Yet for every structure revealed, new questions arise. Were these cities connected in ways we still cannot see? Was their fall a single catastrophe, or a slow fading into the green? Every answer leads only to deeper wonder. In the end, the mystery of the Maya is not one of loss, but of transformation. They remind us that civilizations, like living things, have life cycles. They rise, flourish, and return to the earth. The Maya did not vanish into nothingness. They became part of the breathing world around them. Their temples stand as bones of memory, their glyphs as prayers carved into eternity. As the last light of day fades across the jungle canopy, one can almost imagine the fires of the old cities rekindling. The flicker of torches in the plazas, the sound of flutes and voices carried by the wind. For a moment, time bends, and the Maya live again, dancing between past and present, seen and unseen. But the night deepens, and our path continues onward. Beyond the jungle, across the vast blue ocean, lies another mystery, one built not in the forest but upon the sea itself. There, in the shadow of the Pacific, rests a city of stone rising from coral reefs, a place so strange that even time seems unsure how to remember it. Our next journey drifts eastward to the silent waters of Nanmadol, the city of stone and tide. Another wonder, another disappearance, another whisper of a forgotten world. Far across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where turquoise waters meet endless horizons, lies a place of stone and silence, Nanmadol. Unlike the jungles of Central America or the deserts of Arabia, this city did not disappear beneath creeping vines or shifting sands. It vanished into the very waters upon which it was built. A city of massive basalt stones, arranged in a labyrinth of artificial islets and canals. Nanmadol sits off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia, an architectural enigma whose origins and purpose remain shrouded in mystery. The sheer scale of the construction, hundreds of enormous stones weighing several tons each, transported and placed without the aid of modern machinery, baffles historians and engineers alike. And yet, Today, the city lies silent, reclaimed by the tide, its secrets whispered only to those who listen closely. The story of Nan Madol begins with the Sotalur dynasty, which, according to oral history, ruled over Pohnpei for centuries. Legends tell of a ruler named Olasopa, a semi-divine figure who transformed a collection of small islets into a grand ceremonial city. Canals were dug, stones quarried and ferried across the lagoon, and palaces rose from the coral foundations like a fortress from another world. Each megalith was carefully placed, forming walls, tombs, and temples, aligned in ways that suggested both spiritual intention and practical ingenuity. It was a city designed to awe, to centralize power, and to create a tangible bridge between heaven and earth. And yet, by the time European explorers arrived in the 19th century, Nan Madol was already abandoned, its purpose forgotten, its people scattered. The architecture of Nan Madol is striking in its deliberate strangeness. The city consists of over 90 artificial islets, interconnected by narrow canals that give it the appearance of a floating metropolis. Massive basalt columns, some weighing as much as 50 tons, were stacked to form walls that define courtyards and enclose sacred spaces. No one knows exactly how the stones were moved, nor how the labor was organized. Some theories suggest rafts or log rollers, while others hint at techniques lost to time, known only to the builders. The mystery deepens when one considers that Nan Madol was not just a city. It was a complex ceremonial hub, a place where rulers, priests, and possibly the elite alone could traverse its waterways while common people lived elsewhere, leaving a silent testimony of power structured on isolation. The abandonment of Nan Madol is equally enigmatic. Oral history suggests that the Sotalur rulers were eventually overthrown by a single figure, Isoklikul, whose arrival ended the dynasty and ushered in a new era. Yet the physical evidence is harder to interpret. Was the city abandoned gradually, over generations, as social or political structures eroded? Or was it deserted abruptly, as if some force, natural or otherwise, swept through the lagoon, emptying homes and palaces overnight? Tsunamis, rising sea levels, or shifts in trade routes may have played a role, but none of these explanations fully capture the sense of deliberate disappearance that the site conveys. Standing amid the broken stones, one cannot help but feel the presence of intent, as if the city's silence was not only natural but chosen. Walking through Nan Madol today is a surreal experience. The sun glints off the calm waters of the canals, reflecting the jagged silhouettes of basalt walls that rise like ancient guardians. Mangroves and palm trees have taken root between stones, softening the edges of what was once a harsh, ordered landscape. It is a place where time folds upon itself. The past feels alive, and yet it is almost entirely unknowable. Archaeologists can map the structures, measure the walls, and carbon date artifacts, but the soul of the city, the reasons behind its construction, its function, and the cause of its abandonment, remains elusive. This is a civilization speaking to us through silence and stone, inviting contemplation rather than offering answers. Nan Madol challenges our understanding of what ancient societies were capable of. Its construction required enormous coordination, planning, and technical knowledge. Each stone had to be quarried, shaped, and transported across water without modern machinery. The precision with which they were stacked suggests sophisticated understanding of weight distribution and engineering principles. Yet the people themselves are nearly invisible to history. They left no written record, no detailed accounts of their lives or governance. All that remains are their creations, monumental and mysterious, waiting to be interpreted, understood, and imagined by those who come after them. The city's remote location adds to its enigma. Pohnpei is isolated even today, a tiny speck in the middle of the Pacific. For centuries, this remoteness kept Nan Madol hidden from outsiders, preserving its secrets and fueling stories of a lost civilization. Early explorers who first glimpsed the site were astounded, unable to comprehend that such massive construction could have taken place on a small, coral atoll. To the local people, Nan Madol was never lost, but revered as a sacred place, tied to myths and ancestral memory. These stories speak of rulers with otherworldly abilities, of a city that floated between land and sea, and of divine retribution that eventually emptied it of life. The psychological resonance of Nan Madol is profound. Unlike other lost civilizations, whose ruins are often buried or overgrown, this city sits in a liminal space between water and land, past and present, human and natural. The canals suggest movement, yet they are still. The stones suggest permanence, yet the city decays under the tide. Walking along the remnants of its causeways, one can almost hear the echo of ceremonial voices, the clatter of stone tools, the laughter of inhabitants long gone. It is a place where imagination steps in to fill the gaps left by history, where mystery is as vital as fact. And perhaps that is the lesson of Nan Madol, that not all vanishing is violent or sudden. Some disappearances are deliberate, structured, and ceremonial. Some civilizations retreat, not defeated, but absorbed into their own myth and landscape. The city may have been abandoned, but it did not vanish entirely. It left behind a message carved in stone, an enduring testament to human ingenuity and the allure of the unknown. The Pacific keeps its secrets close, revealing them only to those who seek quietly, who wander slowly, who listen to the whispering tides. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the basalt walls, the city transforms once more. The light softens, the water shimmers like molten gold, and the ruins seem to breathe, as if recalling the lives that once animated them. Night brings another layer of mystery. The whisper of the wind through palm fronds, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and the gentle lapping of waves against stone. In this silence, the story of Nan Madol becomes more than history. It becomes meditation, a reflection on human ambition, ingenuity, and the quiet, inevitable passage of time. From the islands of Micronesia, our journey shifts once more, carried by currents and imagination, to the Aegean Sea, where another civilization, resplendent in art, trade, and culture, was swept away almost overnight. Here, the Minoans of Thera faced destruction on a scale both natural and terrifying, their cities buried beneath ash and legend. The echoes of Nan Madol prepare us for this next story, reminding us that across deserts, jungles, and oceans, humanity has always lived under the shadow of sudden disappearance, and that every vanished world leaves a whisper behind. Far across the shimmering waters of the Aegean Sea lies the island of Thera, known today as Santorini, a place of breathtaking cliffs, cobalt skies, and the haunting remnants of a civilization that vanished almost overnight. The Minoans, masters of art, architecture, and maritime trade, once flourished here, their palaces glittering in the sunlight, their harbors alive with ships laden with goods from Crete, Egypt, and the Near East. Life on Thera was vibrant and intricate. Frescoed walls depicting dolphins, dancers, and sacred rituals adorned luxurious homes, while streets bustled with merchants, artisans, and priests. But beneath this brilliance, a silent force was gathering, one that would transform the island from paradise into ruin and mystery, leaving a sudden emptiness that has echoed through millennia. The Minoans were a civilization deeply attuned to the rhythm of the sea. They built their palaces with remarkable sophistication, designed to withstand earthquakes, and their society thrived on trade, culture, and religion. Life on Thera was marked by festivals and ceremonies, sacred observances honoring deities associated with fertility, the sun, and the ocean. The island itself, with its dramatic caldera cliffs, volcanoes, and fertile lands, offered both opportunity and peril. Yet, like many ancient societies, the Minoans were at the mercy of nature, and the very forces that nurtured them also harbored the seeds of destruction. Around 1600 BCE, the volcano beneath Thera erupted with a fury unlike any the ancient world had witnessed. Geological evidence indicates that this eruption was one of the largest in recorded history, sending clouds of ash high into the sky, triggering tsunamis, and spewing molten lava across the island. The immediate impact was catastrophic. Entire settlements buried beneath volcanic debris, fields rendered infertile, and trade routes disrupted by turbulent seas. Yet it was not only the eruption itself, but its consequences, famine, social collapse, and the displacement of populations, that may have led to the sudden abandonment of the Minoan cities. What had once been a thriving maritime civilization was now silent, its streets emptied, its temples darkened, its frescoes fading into shadow. The archaeological evidence of Thera is both compelling and enigmatic. Excavations at Akrotiri, one of the island's most significant sites, reveal a city preserved in remarkable detail under layers of volcanic ash. Streets, multi-story houses, and public spaces remain intact, frozen in time like a snapshot of everyday life before disaster struck. Frescoes capture the vitality of the people. Women carrying offerings, ships gliding across the sea, dolphins leaping in playful arcs. But the absence of human remains has left scholars puzzled. Did the inhabitants escape in time, fleeing to nearby islands or Crete? Or were some swallowed by the eruption, their lives claimed by fire and ash? The city's sudden abandonment mirrors the stories of other vanished civilizations, a reminder of nature's capacity to erase human presence almost instantaneously. What sets Thera apart from other lost civilizations is the intersection of natural disaster and human imagination. The eruption was so immense that it may have inspired myths far beyond the Aegean. Some scholars suggest that Plato's story of Atlantis, the lost island swallowed by the sea, could trace its origins to this event. Imagine the terror of standing on the cliffs as the ground trembled beneath your feet, black clouds blotting the sun, the distant roar of the sea swelling into waves that devoured harbors and homes. For those who lived through it, the eruption must have felt like divine judgment, a reminder of humanity's fragility in the face of the Earth's immense power. Yet amid destruction, there is evidence of resilience. The Minoans did not vanish entirely after the eruption. Some survivors likely fled to Crete, integrating with other communities, carrying fragments of their culture, their art, and their knowledge. Frescoes and religious practices echo the traditions of Thera long after the island fell silent. And in the centuries that followed, the island itself transformed. The caldera filled with seawater, volcanic slopes rose like jagged sentinels, and nature slowly reclaimed what had once been bustling streets. Today, the cliffs and towns of Santorini rise dramatically from the sea, a reminder that life continues even when human ambition is humbled by cataclysm. Walking through the ruins of Akrotiri is to step into a world suspended between life and memory. The ash preserves details that would otherwise have faded. Staircases, storage jars, frescoed walls, and even wooden furniture traces. One can imagine families moving through these spaces, children running along corridors, merchants negotiating in open courtyards. And then, suddenly, everything stops. The silence that fills the excavation site mirrors the quiet of the island itself, the stillness of absence that speaks louder than any words. It is a poignant reminder that civilizations, no matter how sophisticated, are ultimately at the mercy of forces far greater than themselves. Thera also provides insight into the balance between human ingenuity and natural vulnerability. The Minoans were masters of construction, art, and seafaring, yet even their brilliance could not protect them from the eruption. This contrast between achievement and vulnerability is central to the story of lost civilizations. The more we marvel at their sophistication, their frescoes, harbors, and palaces, the more profound is the mystery of how such a vibrant society could disappear so quickly. Nature's hand, both creative and destructive, remains the ultimate arbiter of human fate. The eruption's impact extended far beyond Thera. Tsunamis may have struck Crete, devastating ports and causing economic turmoil that weakened the Minoan civilization. Earthquakes and ash fallout would have disrupted agriculture, leading to famine and social unrest. Trade routes faltered, and political structures strained under the pressures of displacement and loss. It is conceivable that the combination of natural disaster and human vulnerability created a chain reaction that reshaped the region, marking the end of one chapter in the ancient world and giving rise to new centers of power elsewhere. The sudden disappearance of Thera serves as a reminder of the fragility of even the most sophisticated societies. Despite the passage of thousands of years, the story of Thera continues to captivate. It is a narrative that blends history and myth, fact and imagination, resilience and tragedy. The eruption reminds us that time is not always linear. The human achievement can be ephemeral, and that the Earth's forces can undo centuries of labor in a single moment. Yet, amid this destruction, there is beauty, the preserved frescoes, the carefully laid streets, the enduring structures that speak to a culture's ingenuity and spirit. These remnants allow us to connect with the Minoans across the centuries, to imagine their lives, and to feel the tension between what was and what remains. As twilight falls over the caldera, the sun casting golden light across jagged cliffs, one can almost hear the echoes of the past. The laughter of children, the chants of priests, the clatter of ships in distant harbors. The city that vanished overnight lives on in the stones, in the stories, and in the imagination. Thera reminds us that history is both fragile and enduring, that disappearance does not mean erasure, and that even the most catastrophic events leave behind traces for those willing to seek them. From the volcanic islands of the Aegean, our journey moves once again, this time to the fertile plains of the Indus Valley, where yet another civilization thrived in astonishing complexity, only to vanish in silence. The Minoan story of sudden natural disaster and human resilience prepares us to explore a civilization whose disappearance was less dramatic, yet equally mysterious. The Harappans of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, whose streets, baths, and cities speak of order and knowledge that suddenly faded into the shadows of time. Along the fertile plains of the Indus River, where the waters once nourished fields and cities alike, a civilization of remarkable sophistication thrived nearly 5,000 years ago. The Harappans, builders of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, created a world of urban planning, advanced engineering, and social organization that rivals even modern imagination. Streets were laid out in precise grids. Homes had private bathrooms and drainage systems, and public baths served as centers for ritual and community. The Indus Valley civilization, as it is known today, was a marvel of human ingenuity, a society that harmonized urban life with the rhythms of the natural world. And yet, despite its brilliance, it vanished almost entirely, leaving behind only stone, clay seals, and the silent outlines of streets that were once alive with activity. Walking through Mohenjo-daro today, the scale of the city impresses immediately. Broad streets stretch in perpendicular lines, intersecting at right angles, flanked by rows of baked brick houses. The Great Bath, a massive pool of carefully laid bricks, hints at both religious and communal life, a place where water was not just a necessity, but a sacred element. Each building, each street, each carefully planned corner speaks to an advanced understanding of urban living. The Harappans were not merely surviving. They were flourishing, with trade networks extending across the Indian subcontinent and into Mesopotamia, exchanging goods, ideas, and technologies. It was a civilization that combined practicality with artistry, engineering with ritual, and daily life with a keen attention to the balance between human habitation and the natural environment. Yet for all its advancement, the Indus cities were abandoned. Archaeologists are still piecing together the reasons for this disappearance, but several factors likely converged. Climate change may have altered the course of rivers, reducing water supply and affecting agriculture. Monsoons may have shifted, bringing floods or droughts that destabilized food production. Sociopolitical changes, including internal conflicts or disruptions in trade networks, may have compounded environmental stress. Unlike some other civilizations, there is no evidence of a singular cataclysm, no volcanic eruption, no sudden flood that wiped the cities away overnight. Instead, the decline appears gradual yet inexorable, a slow fading of a brilliant society into silence, leaving behind an aura of mystery and unanswered questions. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Harappan civilization is its script, a series of symbols inscribed on clay seals and pottery. Despite decades of study, these symbols remain undeciphered, leaving us without a clear voice from the past. Without written accounts, we can only imagine what the inhabitants thought, felt, or feared. Their stories, laws, and beliefs exist only as impressions left on clay, as the echo of human presence in the patterns of urban design. This silence adds a layer of haunting beauty. The Harappan speak to us through absence, inviting us to consider their lives, their culture, and their sudden retreat from history's stage. The disappearance of the Harappan cities is striking precisely because of their sophistication. These were not small villages or scattered tribes. They were organized, thriving urban centers, capable of sustaining tens of thousands of people. Streets, granaries, and drainage systems were designed with precision. Water was managed meticulously, and sanitation was far ahead of its time. The sudden absence of people, leaving such meticulous infrastructure behind, is a puzzle that continues to fascinate scholars. It is a disappearance not of memory alone, but of function and life, a city frozen in expectation, waiting for footsteps that never returned. To walk through the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro is to step into a space both familiar and alien. The grid-like streets resonate with echoes of daily life. Children running, merchants calling out their wares, artisans shaping clay and metal. Yet the voices are absent, replaced by the quiet hum of wind across brick walls, the distant song of birds, and the gentle ripple of the Indus River itself. One can almost imagine the city waking each morning, the bustling energy of households, the ceremonial gatherings in public squares, and the silent prayers offered in small shrines tucked between homes. And then, slowly, as if the life force of the city seeped into the earth, the streets fell silent, the people vanished, and the river carried away the footprints of generations. The precision and scale of Harappan urban planning suggest a highly organized society. There must have been governance, regulations, and a social hierarchy capable of sustaining such a network of cities. Yet, paradoxically, the absence of monumental palaces or temples indicates a civilization that may have valued collective function over singular power. It is a society that emphasizes community, infrastructure, and practical wisdom, rather than kings, conquests, or grandiose displays of dominance. Perhaps this very emphasis on balance and order made the civilization especially sensitive to environmental or economic disruption. An imbalance in one part of the system may have reverberated quickly, unraveling the delicate equilibrium that sustained life in the cities. Archaeologists continue to uncover evidence that provides glimpses into Harappan life. Seals depict animals, symbols, and possibly deities. Pottery shows artistic skill and daily utility. Tools, weights, and measures indicate advanced trade systems. Yet despite these discoveries, the most vital piece, the voices of the people themselves, remains lost. What stories did the children tell? What dreams filled the homes at night? What rituals marked birth, marriage, and death? All we have are echoes, impressions left in clay and brick, whispers of a civilization that existed at the peak of urban sophistication before fading into obscurity. The Harappan's disappearance also challenges our understanding of resilience and collapse. Unlike the Minoans, whose sudden volcanic eruption provides a clear external cause, the Indus cities vanished without a single dramatic event. Their decline may have been subtle, invisible to those outside their world. A slow drying of rivers, a migration of people in search of better lands, an erosion of social cohesion over decades or centuries. This gradual disappearance underscores the fragility of human societies, reminding us that even the most advanced civilizations can be undone not by cataclysm alone, but by a combination of environmental, social, and economic pressures. Their story is a meditation on impermanence, teaching us to appreciate the delicate interplay between human achievement and the natural world. The resonance of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa endures not only in archaeology, but in imagination. The precision of their streets, the elegance of their pottery, and the mystery of their script invite contemplation and speculation. These cities, though silent, speak across the millennia, reminding us that human ingenuity is both brilliant and fleeting. The civilization's disappearance is not merely a loss of population, but a pause in the narrative of human potential, a moment where history steps back, leaving only questions to guide our curiosity. As dusk settles over the Indus plains, the shadows lengthen across the ruins, casting long lines over streets that have not felt human footsteps in centuries. The silence of the cities is profound, yet it is filled with stories waiting to be imagined, reconstructed, and felt. The Harappan civilization, in its disappearance, becomes a mirror reflecting the transient nature of all human endeavor. Grand, meticulous, and yet ultimately vulnerable to forces both natural and invisible. From the river plains of South Asia, our journey moves across continents once more toward the frozen north. There, the Vinland of Norse legend and other northern civilizations left traces of human presence that suddenly faded, swallowed by ice, isolation, and the relentless passage of time. The story of the Harappans, with their silent streets and vanished communities, prepares us to contemplate yet another form of disappearance, one where survival collided with inhospitable environments, leaving behind ruins, legends, and enduring questions about the fragility of human life. Far to the north, where icy winds sweep across barren tundras and glaciers carve the landscape, human settlements have also vanished, leaving behind traces that speak of ingenuity, courage, and abrupt disappearance. These northern communities, from the Norse colonies in Greenland to mysterious settlements in the Canadian Arctic, face challenges unlike any in temperate or tropical regions. Here, the environment was both provider and destroyer, dictating the rhythm of life with unforgiving precision. Survival required adaptation, planning, and resilience. Yet even these remarkable human qualities could not guarantee permanence. The ruins they left are reminders of human ambition tested against the extremes of nature, a fragile civilization caught between endurance and oblivion. The Norse settlements in Greenland are among the most remarkable examples. Around 985 CE, Eric the Red led a group of Vikings westward, seeking fertile lands beyond Iceland. They established thriving communities along the southwestern coast of Greenland, farming, raising livestock, and trading with Europe. Churches, longhouses, and workshops were built, their timber structures remarkable against the harsh Arctic landscape. For centuries, these communities flourished despite isolation, relying on ingenuity and connection with both land and sea. Yet by the 15th century, the settlements vanished. Archaeological evidence points to environmental decline. Cooling temperatures during the Little Ice Age, shortened growing seasons, and the eventual inability to sustain livestock. Trade diminished, and famine may have struck repeatedly. The settlements were not conquered. They simply faded, leaving the land quiet once more. The suddenness of their disappearance mirrors that of other lost civilizations. Unlike gradual decline or conquest, the northern settlements were abandoned when the conditions of survival could no longer be met. Homes, churches, and graves remained, frozen in place, testimony to a world that once was. The Norse left few written records explaining their departure, and later explorers found only skeletal remains, scattered artifacts, and the faint echoes of a culture adapted to extremes, yet ultimately overwhelmed. Nature, relentless and indifferent, claimed what human hands could no longer sustain. It is an unsettling reminder that human ambition, no matter how bold, is always subject to the whims of climate, geography, and circumstance. In addition to the Norse, other northern settlements display similar patterns of sudden disappearance. Indigenous communities, such as those in the Canadian Arctic, navigated icebound landscapes, hunting seals, caribou, and fish to survive. Some sites, abandoned for reasons lost to time, reveal sophisticated tools, structures, and art. Yet their populations shifted or dispersed, sometimes within a single generation, leaving behind only the faint traces of human presence amid frozen plains and rocky shores. Like the Minoans buried by ash or the Harapans slowly fading, these northern societies illustrate the delicate balance between human settlement and environmental constraints. The land itself becomes a co-author of history, shaping destinies and recording loss in stone, ice, and snow. Archaeological study of these settlements reveals remarkable ingenuity. Longhouses were insulated against wind and cold, storage pits protected food from freezing and thawing cycles, and trade networks extended across treacherous seas. Yet for all their expertise, the communities remained vulnerable. Climatic shifts, resource depletion, or isolation could disrupt survival in a single season. The northern examples underscore a theme consistent across lost civilizations. Human adaptation can achieve brilliance, but it is rarely absolute. Every society exists in a fragile equilibrium, and sometimes the smallest imbalance can trigger sudden disappearance. The psychological resonance of northern disappearances is profound. Unlike desert cities swallowed by sand or tropical civilizations hidden in the jungle, the North preserves traces in stark clarity. Snow and ice act as both protector and eraser. Ruins are revealed beneath permafrost or meltwater, yet exposed to the relentless forces of freezing, thawing, and erosion. To stand at these sites is to confront time itself, the fragility of life against the vastness of the elements. One can imagine families huddled against wind-lashed walls, children peering out across endless ice, elders recounting tales of ancestors and survival, only for all traces of this life to vanish within a single harsh winter or decade of environmental change. The echoes of these vanished communities ripple across history and imagination. They remind us that human persistence alone is not always enough, that even resourcefulness and foresight can be overwhelmed by forces larger than ourselves. The Norse settlements of Greenland, in particular, serve as both inspiration and caution. They show the potential of exploration, endurance, and cultural transplantation, but also the limits imposed by isolation, climate, and resource scarcity. Unlike civilizations erased by conquest or natural disaster in a dramatic instant, the North presents a disappearance that is both abrupt and imperceptible, unfolding quietly until the world simply forgets that these people once lived there. There is an eerie poetry to the northern disappearances. The ruins of longhouses, stone foundations, and communal spaces sit in silence, sometimes covered by snow for most of the year, waiting to be glimpsed by those who venture into these remote lands. The wind whistles across empty fields, carrying with it the faintest suggestion of past lives, the laughter of children, the clatter of tools, the voices of storytellers recounting their people's history. These remnants exist at the intersection of nature and memory, offering both evidence and mystery. In this sense, northern civilizations share a kinship with other lost worlds, from the deserts of Arabia to the jungles of Central America. All are reminders of humanity's impermanence and the enduring intrigue of vanished societies. The northern disappearances also highlight a stark contrast between human ambition and environmental limits. Societies like the Greenlandic Norse pushed the boundaries of what was possible, establishing farms, trade routes, and religious institutions in a challenging climate. Their presence demonstrates resilience, determination, and skill, yet also underscores vulnerability. The very features that enabled their survival, resourceful adaptation, maritime expertise, and communal structures, could not shield them from sustained climatic change and isolation. In this, the northern examples echo a theme present in all vanished civilizations. The human ingenuity, however remarkable, is always balanced by forces beyond control. Standing amidst the ruins today, one feels a sense of reverence and reflection. These northern sites are quieter than deserts, more stark than jungles, yet no less compelling. The absence of people creates a space for contemplation, a bridge between the past and present, life and memory. It is a reminder that civilizations do not need to fall dramatically to vanish. They can simply cease, leaving the land to remember what humans can no longer sustain. Their silence invites thought, meditation, and a deeper understanding of the fragility inherent in all human endeavor. As the Arctic twilight deepens and the long shadows stretch across frozen plains, the story of the North gently folds into a broader pattern. From deserts to jungles, islands to river valleys, the civilizations we have explored share a haunting commonality: suddenness, mystery, and a lingering presence despite absence. The Greenlandic Norse, like the Harappans, Minoans, Maya, and Ubar, remind us that disappearance is a narrative thread woven through history, connecting distant times and places in a tapestry of wonder and reflection. From this frozen north, our journey now turns south, back toward warmer climates, to the enigmatic civilizations of South America. There, hidden in the mountains and deserts, are the remnants of the Tiwanaku and Nazca cultures, whose cities and monumental constructions vanished under circumstances equally mysterious, leaving patterns, stones, and lines that continue to puzzle scholars and captivate imagination. The frozen silence of the North prepares us to encounter disappearance once more, in landscapes both stark and sublime, and in civilizations whose echoes still resonate across time. High in the thin, wind-swept air of the Andes, where mountains pierce the clouds and rivers carve deep canyons, lie the remnants of civilizations that disappeared long before modern history could record their existence. Cultures such as Tiwanaku in Bolivia and the Nazca in Peru flourished in environments both harsh and sublime, creating cities, monuments, and landscapes that continue to captivate the imagination. Tiwanaku rose beside the shores of the ancient Lake Titicaca, a city of stone blocks, monumental gateways, and precise solar alignments. Nazca, in contrast, sprawled across the arid deserts of southern Peru, leaving behind enormous geoglyphs, the famed Nazca lines, whose purpose and meaning remain shrouded in mystery. These civilizations, like so many before them, thrived, innovated, and then vanished, leaving whispers rather than chronicles, traces rather than testimony. Tiwanaku stands as a testament to architectural ingenuity and cosmological understanding. Its massive stone blocks were cut with extraordinary precision, some weighing over 100 tons, transported over uneven terrain, and assembled with skill that continues to puzzle engineers today. The city was more than a collection of structures. It was a ceremonial hub, a place where astronomy, ritual, and governance intertwined. Its temples were aligned to track solstices and equinoxes, suggesting that the people of Tiwanaku understood celestial patterns as part of their spiritual and social order. Agriculture was ingeniously adapted to the high-altitude environment, with raised fields and canals allowing crops to flourish despite frost and thin soil. The city symbolized a harmony between human ingenuity and nature, a balance that may have been as fragile as it was brilliant. Yet, around the 11th century, Tiwanaku was abandoned. Archaeological evidence points to environmental changes as a probable cause. Severe droughts may have reduced crop yields, undermining the city's ability to sustain its population. Social and political factors likely compounded these difficulties as power structures fragmented and communities dispersed. Unlike cities buried by catastrophic eruptions or engulfed by shifting sands, Tiwanaku faded gradually, its population leaving in search of more hospitable lands, abandoning temples and streets that still stand today in solemn testimony. The mystery lies not only in why the city declined, but also in the enduring precision of its construction. How a society capable of such engineering mastery could succumb to forces beyond its control. Southward, the Nazca culture presents a different, yet equally compelling puzzle. Across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca etched enormous lines and figures into the desert floor, depicting animals, humans, and geometric patterns that can only be fully appreciated from the air. These geoglyphs, some stretching hundreds of meters, required extraordinary coordination, planning, and understanding of scale. The purpose of these lines remains debated. Were they ceremonial pathways, astronomical markers, or offerings to the gods for water and fertility? Whatever their meaning, the Nazca lines are a profound expression of human creativity intertwined with environment and spirituality, a culture leaving a mark so monumental that it endures even as the people themselves disappeared. The Nazca civilization, like Tiwanaku, vanished without clear explanation. Archaeologists suggest that prolonged droughts, possibly exacerbated by climate anomalies, may have forced populations to migrate. Social and ritual practices might have broken down under environmental stress, and settlements slowly emptied, leaving ceremonial sites like Kawachi and the Nazca lines intact but silent. The absence of destruction in these sites adds to the enigma. There is no evidence of warfare or invasion that could account for the disappearance. Instead, the vanishing appears quiet, methodical, and almost contemplative, a civilization retreating into memory, leaving symbols on the desert floor to speak to the future. Walking through these ancient sites today evokes a profound sense of connection and reflection. In Tiwanaku, the massive stone gateways rise against the horizon, their carvings etched with symbolic imagery of gods, animals, and celestial events. The shadows of these structures stretch long as the sun dips behind the mountains, creating an interplay of light and stone that seems intentional, almost meditative. In the Nazca Desert, one can wander among the smaller lines and markers, feeling the vast scale of the creations, imagining hands and feet tracing the earth with care and devotion. Both cultures leave behind evidence of meticulous planning, technical skill, and spiritual depth, offering a glimpse into worlds that have ceased to exist but continue to resonate in the present. The Andes themselves play a silent role in this narrative. Mountains and deserts, rivers and lakes, were not mere backdrops but active participants in the story of these civilizations. They shaped agricultural practices, influenced spiritual beliefs, and dictated settlement patterns. When environmental shifts occurred, drought, erosion, or flooding, they could quickly undermine even the most advanced societies. Tiwanaku's raised fields became untenable, crops failed, and communities dispersed. In the Nazca Desert, shifts in water availability may have disrupted daily life and ceremonial practices. Nature, impartial and unyielding, reminded these societies of the limits of human control. Their disappearance, while not as instantaneous as a volcanic eruption, is nonetheless a stark reminder of humanity's vulnerability. Yet there is beauty in the subtlety of their vanishings. Unlike civilizations buried in sudden cataclysm or engulfed by sand, Tiwanaku and Nazca offer a story of gradual transformation, of culture fading into memory, leaving tangible marks in architecture, glyphs, and landscapes. These remnants invite contemplation rather than shock. They challenge us to imagine not only the lives of the people who built them, but also their perception of impermanence and continuity. Perhaps the very act of creating enduring structures, like stone temples or desert geoglyphs, was a way to resist complete disappearance, to leave whispers for future generations, to communicate across time even as daily life ebbed away. The connection between Tiwanaku and Nazca also highlights a recurring theme in lost civilizations: the interplay between human creativity and environmental fragility. Both cultures mastered their landscapes, yet both were ultimately constrained by forces beyond their control. Their disappearance is a testament to resilience tempered by vulnerability, a reminder that brilliance does not always guarantee permanence. These vanished societies teach us to marvel not only at what humans can achieve, but also at the delicate balance upon which every civilization rests. As twilight falls over the Andes and the desert, the stone and sand glow with the final light of day, creating a haunting and meditative atmosphere. It is easy to imagine the cities alive with ritual, labor, and celebration, only to step back and recognize the emptiness left behind. Tiwanaku and Nazca remain as silent guides, offering insight into human ingenuity, environmental adaptation, and the profound mystery of disappearance. They whisper across centuries, urging contemplation of the delicate threads that bind life, culture, and survival. From the high peaks and arid deserts of South America, our journey moves next to the lush river valleys and forests of Southeast Asia, where civilizations such as Angkor flourished before vanishing under mysterious circumstances. The Andes have taught us about subtle disappearance, environmental fragility, and human resilience. In Angkor, we encounter another story of grandeur, collapse, and the overwhelming return of nature, where stone temples rise from jungle canopies and once mighty empires fade into green shadows. In the heat of the African sun, south of where the Nile narrows between sandstone cliffs, a kingdom once flourished that rivaled the splendor of Egypt itself. Its name was Nubia, or as it was known in its own tongue, the land of Kush. Today it lies mostly silent. The desert winds sweep through ruined temples and sand-filled pyramids, whispering fragments of a civilization that both shadowed and shaped its powerful northern neighbor. But long before it became a forgotten name on the edge of maps, Nubia was a place of gold, iron, and divine kings, where black stone monuments caught the same sunrise that once touched the pharaoh's tombs. Archaeologists believe that Nubia's earliest roots reach back thousands of years before Christ, when small kingdoms clustered along the Nile's fertile banks. Over time, these villages grew into centers of trade and craftsmanship, controlling the flow of gold, ivory, and incense that Egypt so desperately desired. The two cultures were intertwined, sometimes as allies, sometimes as rivals. Egyptian scribes wrote of Nubia as a land of mystery and wealth, a place where the gods might have hidden their treasures. To the Nubians, Egypt was both a neighbor and a mirror, a reflection of what power and divinity could be, and perhaps what it could become in their own hands. In time, that ambition gave rise to the kingdom of Kush, whose capital at Napata, and later Meroe, became the beating heart of an African empire. The pyramids of Nubia, though smaller than those of Giza, rose in greater number, sharp and elegant against the desert sky. The Kushite kings worshipped Ammonius and other Egyptian deities but spoke their own language, carved in a script still not fully understood. In the 8th century BCE, the balance of power shifted in a way no one could have predicted. The Kushite rulers marched north and conquered Egypt itself. For nearly 100 years, the so-called Black Pharaohs ruled both lands, restoring temples, reviving art, and writing their chapter in the Book of Eternity. And yet, as suddenly as their star rose, it began to dim. By the time Rome reached the Nile's shores, the great cities of Kush were already retreating southward, away from the shifting tides of empire. At Meroe, the people turned toward new industries, iron smelting, trade across the Red Sea, and spiritual traditions unique to their land. The sound of hammers and furnaces filled the air, and the city thrived once again. But something began to change. The Nile itself seemed to turn against them. Its course grew fickle, its floods less generous. Forests that once fed the iron furnaces vanished, leaving barren soil and hunger in their wake. The exact cause of Nubia's decline remains uncertain, suspended between history and hypothesis. Some say climate change and deforestation choked the land's ability to sustain its people. Others believe shifting trade routes left Meroe isolated, forgotten by the empires that once coveted its wealth. There are hints of invasion, too. The rise of the Aksumite kingdom from the Ethiopian highlands, whose armies may have crossed the desert to deliver the final blow. But the truth, as with so many ancient mysteries, is layered like the sands that now cover their ruins. There was no single day when Nubia fell. It faded like a slow sunset over the desert, golden at first, then dim, then gone. What makes Nubia's disappearance so haunting is not only the loss of its people, but the near erasure of its voice. Much of what we know comes from outsiders: Egyptian inscriptions, Roman travelers, and later European explorers. The Nubian script, called Meroitic, remains only partially deciphered, its secrets stubbornly quiet. We can read their names, their prayers, their lists of offerings to the gods, but not their stories, their songs, their fears. A whole language waits, locked in silence. It is as though an entire civilization is speaking to us from behind glass, its words muffled by time. Even so, fragments survive. The pyramids of Nubia still stand, more than 200 of them, scattered across the desert like a constellation brought to earth. Their sharp forms catch the sunrise, casting long shadows that stretch toward the Nile, as if reaching back to the world they once ruled. In the tombs, archaeologists find echoes of a unique fusion: Egyptian hieroglyphs beside African motifs, gold jewelry crafted with astonishing precision, and royal masks whose eyes still seem alive. Each artifact tells a story of dignity and power, of people who saw themselves not as imitators, but as inheritors of a divine legacy. Modern excavations continue to unearth clues: fragments of temples, iron furnaces, inscriptions that may one day unlock the lost voice of Meroe. Satellite imaging reveals traces of roads and walls buried under centuries of sand. Slowly, piece by piece, Nubia is re-emerging from the silence that claimed it. But in many ways, it remains an enigma, a civilization powerful enough to rule Egypt, yet so fragile that it vanished without a lasting echo in mainstream memory. Perhaps that is why its story feels so intimate, a reminder that even greatness can fade quietly, without the sound of war or fire, disappearing into the patient embrace of the desert. In the stillness of night, when the world grows quiet, one might imagine the pyramids of Nubia standing beneath the moon, their stones cool and gleaming. The winds that sweep across them carry more than dust. They carry memory. Somewhere beneath those dunes lies not only the record of a vanished kingdom, but the proof that history's silences are never absolute. Every civilization leaves a trace, a line in the sand, a word in stone, a whisper on the wind. Nubia may have disappeared from the eyes of the world, but not from the memory of the earth. It waits there beneath the starlit sky, half forgotten, half remembered, the kingdom that vanished from the Nile, yet still breathes in the spaces between history and mystery. Around 12 centuries before the birth of Christ, the world that had defined the Bronze Age began to crumble. It was a world of glittering trade routes, magnificent palaces, and written tablets carved with records of kings and merchants. From the Aegean to Anatolia, from the banks of the Nile to the hills of Canaan, civilizations thrived in a delicate network of exchange and alliance. The Mycenaeans built mighty citadels crowned with lion gates. The Hittites ruled vast territories with iron and diplomacy. And in the city of Ugarit, scribes wrote in cuneiform, keeping careful track of goods, gods, and royal decrees. Yet within a few decades, all of it would fall silent. It was as if the lights of an entire age flickered out one by one, leaving behind only ruins and unanswered questions. Archaeologists call it the Late Bronze Age collapse, a phrase too small for a catastrophe so vast. Between 1200 and 1150 BCE, a wave of destruction swept through the eastern Mediterranean. Cities that had stood for centuries were burned to the ground. Hattusa, the Hittite capital, vanished from the record. Mycenae and Tiryns, those proud Greek strongholds, were abandoned. The once vibrant ports of Ugarit and Alalak disappeared beneath layers of ash. Even mighty Egypt, though it survived, stumbled and never fully recovered its old grandeur. What caused this chain of calamities remains one of history's most haunting riddles. The evidence lies scattered: burned walls, toppled statues, broken pottery, and from these fragments, we try to piece together the story of a world undone. One of the most enigmatic clues comes from the inscriptions of Pharaoh Ramses III, who ruled during the final chapter of Egypt's empire. His walls at Medinet Habu depict a fierce battle against mysterious invaders known as the Sea Peoples. They came, he claimed, from faraway lands, arriving by both land and sea, destroying everything in their path. No land could stand before their arms, the inscriptions read. They laid hands upon the lands as far as the circuit of the earth. These invaders fought with curved swords and wore feathered headdresses, and though Egypt repelled them, the cost was immense. Ramses survived, but his kingdom was forever changed. And the question remains, who were these Sea Peoples? Theories abound, each more compelling than the last. Some historians believe they were displaced peoples from the Aegean, refugees fleeing famine, earthquakes, or the collapse of their own kingdoms. Others think they were pirates or mercenaries, opportunists drawn to plunder the wealthy coastal cities weakened by internal strife. There are even suggestions that they represented a vast migration, a human tide caused by climate shifts that ruined harvests and forced whole populations to move in desperation. In this view, the Sea Peoples were not villains, but victims of circumstance, the human face of environmental collapse. Whatever their origin, their arrival coincided with the unraveling of every major power in the region, as if the entire system of the Bronze Age could no longer bear its own weight. To understand the magnitude of this fall, one must picture the world before it ended. The Bronze Age was an era of connectivity. Tin from Afghanistan, copper from Cyprus, gold from Nubia, and grains from the Fertile Crescent all moved along established routes. Royal families intermarried. Scribes communicated in Akkadian, the diplomatic language of the time. Palaces in Mycenae, Troy, and Hattusa shared not only goods but ideas, architecture, weaponry, art, and myths. It was a globalized world in miniature, bound together by ships, treaties, and faith and stability. Yet that very interdependence made it fragile. When one part faltered, when drought struck or trade faltered, the tremors spread everywhere. Recent evidence suggests that climate played a silent but devastating role. Pollen analysis and ice core studies reveal a period of severe drought lasting decades. Crops failed, rivers dried, and famine took hold. When food disappears, kingdoms crumble, and alliances dissolve into chaos. Earthquakes also struck across the Aegean and Anatolia, toppling cities already weakened by hunger and rebellion. In this fragile world, each calamity fed the next. Drought led to migration, migration to war, war to the collapse of trade, and trade collapsed to famine once more. It was not one event, but a cascade, a perfect storm that ended an age. And yet, amid all the devastation, some traces of continuity remained. Egypt, though battered, endured. In Greece, survivors retreated into the hills, carrying with them oral traditions that would later become the seeds of Homer's epics. Out of the ashes of the Hittite Empire, smaller kingdoms arose, the Neo-Hittites of Syria, who built new cities upon the ruins of the old. Even as the light dimmed, embers remained, waiting centuries to ignite the Iron Age. This slow transformation reminds us that collapse is not always a sudden death, but a metamorphosis, a world shedding its old skin to become something new. Still, the silence that followed must have been profound. For centuries after 1200 BCE, the Eastern Mediterranean entered a dark age, a time with few written records, when literacy and monumental architecture nearly vanished. To later generations, it must have seemed as if the gods themselves had turned away. Where once there had been songs of victory and processions of gold, there was only wind over broken walls and the creak of abandoned ships. The poets who lived generations later could only imagine what had happened, turning memory into myth. Some spoke of Troy and its fall, of heroes scattered by storms, of a world that had ended in fire. Perhaps these myths were not inventions at all, but echoes, the lingering memory of a civilization that disappeared overnight. The mystery of the Bronze Age collapse continues to intrigue scholars, not only because of its scale, but because it mirrors our own world in unsettling ways. A network of nations dependent on trade and technology, a changing climate, migrations of desperate people, the fragility of abundance. These patterns feel uncomfortably familiar. The past becomes a mirror, reflecting the delicate balance upon which civilization always rests. The people of that era surely believed their world would endure forever. They built their cities to last, their temples to honor eternal gods. Yet eternity proved shorter than they imagined. When we look at the scattered ruins of Hattusa, Ugarit, and Mycenae, it's easy to see only loss. But if you listen closely, you can sense the continuity beneath the silence, the human will to adapt, to rebuild, to remember. The collapse of the Bronze Age was not the end of civilization. It was the pause before a new beginning. From those ashes rose the classical worlds of Greece, Israel, and Persia, the heirs of forgotten kings and nameless traders who once ruled the seas. The mystery, then, is not only how they vanished, but how humanity endured. And so the tale of the sea peoples and the shattered age drifts between darkness and dawn. It is both a warning and a lullaby, a story of how everything can change, and how life, somehow, always continues. The waves that once carried the invaders now lap gently against silent shores. The cities are gone, the kings forgotten, but the sea still whispers their names. In that whisper lies the truth of history. Civilizations fall, yet the world remembers, carrying their echoes forward, like ripples that never truly fade. When we step back from the ruins and broken stones of vanished worlds, a pattern begins to appear, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Civilizations, no matter how vast or ingenious, seem to follow rhythms not unlike the lives of the people who build them. They are born, they flourish, they struggle, and eventually they fade. The reasons may differ: drought, invasion, rebellion, or simple exhaustion. Yet beneath them all runs the same quiet truth. Everything that rises carries within it the seeds of its own decline. It is not a punishment, but a process. The earth moves, the rivers shift, the sky changes its moods, and human societies, bound to those rhythms, must either adapt or dissolve into memory. Historians and archaeologists study the evidence with the precision of surgeons, trying to name the causes. Climate change, soil depletion, overpopulation, war. Each explanation fits some part of the puzzle, but never the whole picture. There's always an element that slips through the net of data, something less tangible, something human. Pride, perhaps, or complacency. The quiet certainty that tomorrow will look like today, and that the walls we build will hold forever. That illusion, more than any storm or famine, has undone kingdoms. It happened in the Bronze Age, in the deserts of Nubia, in the forests of the Maya. It happens still, though our monuments now stretch higher and our lights shine longer into the night. Civilizations do not vanish overnight without reason. Yet the reasons are rarely clear while they are unfolding. Often, collapse begins not with fire, but with silence, the slow failure of systems that once held everything together. A harvest fails, trade slows, people move elsewhere, and temples that once echoed with prayers grow empty. Leaders cling to ceremony, mistaking it for stability. The people sense change before they understand it. They whisper of omens and turn to old gods for reassurance. And then, when the balance finally tips, it feels sudden, though the decay had been there all along, like roots rotting beneath a grand tree. If you listen closely to the archaeological record, you can almost hear that slow unraveling. It is in the unfinished carvings of temples abandoned mid-construction, in the layers of soot from fires that no one rebuilt, in the sudden absence of imported goods that once traveled thousands of miles. The signs of collapse are always small at first. A missing trade link, an uncollected tax, an empty granary. Yet together they form the language of decline. The world narrows. The grand narratives of empire shrink into local stories, and the people, once bound by a shared destiny, scatter like dust on the wind. Still, to speak only of endings is to miss the other half of the pattern. For each civilization that falls, something else begins, often in the same soil, watered by the same rivers. The fall of the Bronze Age gave birth to the Iron Age. The fading of Nubia opened paths for new kingdoms farther south. The Maya cities may have emptied, but their descendants still walk the forests, speaking tongues that carry echoes of ancient prayers. What disappears from the eye does not always disappear from the world. Sometimes it merely changes form, traditions passed down, knowledge hidden in myth, stone repurposed into new walls. The story of collapse, then, is also the story of transformation. It is comforting, perhaps, to think of history as progress, a line forever moving upward. But nature teaches a different rhythm. Forests burn and regrow. Rivers flood and recede. Even stars are born, blaze, and fade into quiet embers. Human history, in its essence, follows the same cosmic pulse. Our greatest achievements arise from cooperation and imagination. Yet those very qualities can lead to overreach. We build beyond our means, extract beyond renewal, believe that abundance is permanent. And when nature reminds us otherwise, we call it disaster. But it is, in truth, the Earth's gentle correction, a rebalancing we struggle to understand. Perhaps that is why stories of vanished civilizations fascinate us so deeply. They are not only tales of mystery, but mirrors of our own uncertainty. When we hear of Ubar buried beneath sand, or the Norse who vanished from Greenland, we feel a quiet shiver of recognition. They are not strangers from a distant past. They are us, seen through the lens of time. The same hopes, the same mistakes, the same desire to leave something that endures. In their ruins, we glimpse our reflection, fragile, brilliant, and temporary. There is, however, a strange comfort in that realization. Knowing that all things change does not make the world less beautiful. It makes it more so. Every monument, every city skyline, every whisper of culture is precious because it will not last forever. The beauty lies not in permanence, but in participation, in knowing we are part of the same grand cycle that carried the Maya, the Nubians, the Hittites, and the countless others who came before us. Their endings, though tragic, made space for what followed. Our time will one day do the same. As the night deepens and the hum of history softens into silence, the pattern of vanishing becomes clearer. Civilizations end not simply because they fail, but because they fulfill their purpose, to explore, to create, to dream, and then to yield to the next wave of humanity. The world remembers them not through their ruins, but through the continuity of human spirit. The same hands that built the temples of Kush built the cathedrals of Europe, the cities of today, and the dreams of tomorrow. And so the question is no longer why civilizations disappear, but how we carry their lessons forward. Will we listen to the whispers of the past, the warning woven into their silence? Or will we, too, mistake abundance for eternity? The answer, perhaps, lies not in grand empires or lost cities, but in humility, in recognizing that all things, no matter how great, exist within a larger rhythm. The pattern of vanishing is, in the end, the pattern of life itself. A soft reminder that impermanence is not the enemy of history, but its most faithful companion. Far out in the Western Pacific, beyond the familiar maps of the ancient world, lies a small island shrouded in silence and sea mist. Pohnpei, in present-day Micronesia. Here, half submerged in turquoise water and tangled mangroves, rests one of the strangest archaeological sites on Earth, Nenmadel. Built from enormous basalt columns stacked like black organ pipes, it rises from the waves like the skeleton of a forgotten dream. The stones are too heavy for any simple explanation, some weighing as much as 50 tons. And yet, centuries ago, people moved them across coral reefs and shallow channels to create a city unlike any other, a labyrinth of islets, canals, and towering walls. They called it the Venice of the Pacific. Today, it is a place of eerie stillness, the jungle creeping back, the waves whispering against stone foundations that no one has fully understood. Nan Madol's builders belonged to the Sauteleur dynasty, a ruling elite who governed the island long before Europeans ever arrived. Their reign began around the 12th century, though oral traditions hint at much older origins. The city they created was both a royal center and a spiritual stage, a place where gods were honored, rituals performed, and power consolidated. Each of its nearly 100 artificial islets had a purpose: dwellings for nobles, temples for worship, platforms for tombs. At night, torches once flickered along the canals, their reflections turning the dark water to gold. From afar, it must have looked like a city floating on the sea, suspended between earth and sky. Yet beneath its beauty lies an unsolved enigma. How did an island people, without metal tools or draft animals, move such immense stones? Some theories suggest they used rafts and coconut fiber ropes, leveraging tides and teamwork. Others whisper of lost technologies, magnetic forces, or even myths of levitating stones guided by ancient chants. While modern archaeology leans toward human ingenuity, a combination of skill, patience, and organization, the precision of the construction continues to amaze. The basalt prisms fit together tightly, their corners aligned with a confidence that speaks of centuries of craftsmanship and cosmic belief. Nan Madol is not only a monument of stone, but of silence, a message left by a people whose story has nearly vanished into the sea. The city's purpose, too, remains partly a mystery. According to local legend, the Sauteleur rulers were not native to the island, but descended from two brothers who arrived from the west, guided by magic. They established a dynasty that ruled with divine authority, demanding tribute and obedience from all. Over generations, their power grew absolute, but so did their arrogance. The stories tell of a time when the rulers offended the gods and the people alike, their cruelty driving the land itself to rebellion. It was then, say the myths, that a new leader arose, a demigod named Isoclecal, who overthrew the Sauteleur and ended their reign. After that, Nan Madol was abandoned. The canals filled with debris, the temples fell silent, and the jungle crept back through the basalt walls. The sea began its slow work of reclamation. Modern scholars offer more grounded explanations for the fall. The structure of Nan Madol, with its isolated compounds and rigid hierarchy, may have contributed to its own undoing. The Sauteleur rulers centralized power in a way that strained the island's limited resources. As population pressures grew and local clans resisted the rulers' demands, the system may have collapsed under its own weight. Isolation from trade routes and a reliance on fragile ecosystems could have deepened the crisis. Whether rebellion or slow decay, the result was the same: a civilization that disappeared, leaving behind only stones too heavy to move again. Standing amid the ruins, one feels the tension between human ambition and nature's quiet persistence. The basalt walls still rise several meters high, but their edges are softened by vines and moss. The canals, once bustling with canoes, are now shallow pools where fish dart in shadow. Birds nest in the crevices of temples that once echoed with chants to the gods. The air hums with humidity and unseen life. It is as if the earth itself has drawn a curtain over the past, turning history into landscape. The city that once embodied human order is now claimed by the chaos of nature, not as destruction, but as return. There is something deeply tranquil about Nan Madol. It does not inspire the fear or grandeur of Egypt's pyramids or the awe of Machu Picchu. Instead, it feels contemplative, a city dreaming beneath the waves. Perhaps that is why it lingers in the imagination. It reminds us that mystery does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. The very act of its construction seems like a prayer made solid, a dialogue between humans and the sea. The stones do not tell us why the people built this place, but they reveal how much they believed in its necessity. To create such a city required faith, faith in the unseen, in the alignment of stars, in the idea that a place could exist between worlds. In recent years, scientists have begun to map the site with drones and sonar, uncovering more of its hidden geometry. Beneath the surface lie further layers, perhaps older than the visible ruins. Foundations that suggest Nan Madol may have evolved over centuries, expanding as its builders learned to command both land and water. Some even speculate that it began as a sacred space before becoming a seat of power, its spiritual roots slowly overtaken by politics. If true, this would make its fate almost poetic, a city born from devotion, destroyed by ambition. Yet even now, local people treat it with respect, approaching with quiet reverence. They say the site is still inhabited by spirits, the guardians of a world that no longer speaks our language. As night falls over Pohnpei, the black stones of Nan Madol gleam faintly in the moonlight, half in shadow, half submerged. The ocean breathes around them, patient and eternal. Somewhere beneath the water lie stories that no archaeologist can recover, stories of rulers and priests, of workers who sang as they lifted impossible stones, of a civilization that believed it could bridge the divine and the human. In their silence, we hear an echo of all lost worlds, the reminder that what we build, no matter how enduring, must one day return to the elements. The waves will claim the walls, the vines will weave through the corridors, and the sea will remember long after names are forgotten. Nan Madol endures not because we understand it, but because we do not. Its mystery keeps it alive in our minds, a monument to human possibility, to the boundary between knowledge and wonder. Like the other vanished civilizations of history, it stands as both warning and comfort, that what is lost is never truly gone, and that in the stillness of ruins, the story of humanity continues to breathe. Far beyond the snow peaks of the Himalayas lies the whisper of a hidden realm, Shambhala, the kingdom of light. Described in Tibetan lore as a land of eternal peace, it is said to exist where the physical and the spiritual meet. Some believe it lies hidden among the mountains, while others say it dwells within the human spirit. For centuries, seekers have searched for its gates, drawn not by proof, but by yearning, the hope that somewhere perfection survived the fall of time. Ancient texts speak of golden temples, crystal rivers, and people who live in harmony, untouched by decay. Yet perhaps Shambhala is not a place, but a mirror, reflecting our longing for balance and understanding. Like Atlantis or Agartha, it symbolizes the same truth, that humanity's deepest mysteries are not always buried in earth or sea, but within our consciousness. The Western explorers who sought it found no city of light, yet many returned changed, speaking of an inexplicable calm, as if they had glimpsed something beyond the visible. Shambhala endures as both myth and metaphor, a reminder that even in a world mapped and measured, mystery survives. Perhaps the lost civilizations we search for are not only relics of stone, but dreams of wisdom waiting to be rediscovered within ourselves. Across history, countless civilizations have vanished, leaving only silence where cities once stood. From the Mayan temples to the ruins of the Indus, from Nan Madol's basalt walls to forgotten empires beneath the sands, humanity's past is written in both brilliance and erasure. Every rise carries within it the quiet shadow of decline, yet every disappearance leaves behind whispers of knowledge, fragments of culture, and lessons in impermanence. These sudden vanishings remind us that collapse is not always destruction. When a civilization fades, its spirit often transforms. Ideas migrate, beliefs evolve. What once seemed lost becomes myth, and myth, in time, becomes memory. The vanished worlds live on not in ruins alone, but in the ways we still dream, build, and wonder. Perhaps what draws us to these stories is recognition, the reflection of our own fragility. We, too, live amid uncertainty, crafting monuments and systems that time will one day reclaim. Yet the cycle is not cruel. It is natural, eternal. The ruins that remain remind us of continuity, that from endings, beginnings quietly bloom. Every civilization that disappeared overnight still breathes through us, teaching that nothing truly ends, it merely changes form. As the journey ends, the world of forgotten cities fades into dawn. The ruins grow quiet, their mysteries settling like mist upon memory. We realize that history's vanishings are not tales of loss, but of transformation. Every civilization that fell left behind more than stone. It left wisdom, art, and echoes of the human spirit. In those echoes, we find our own reflection. We, too, build in pursuit of meaning, knowing that time will one day erase our names. Yet like those before us, we carve our hopes into the world, trusting that something will remain, an idea, a melody, a trace of wonder. The past teaches that impermanence is not defeat. It is the rhythm of existence. Perhaps that is the quiet truth behind all mystery, that nothing is ever truly lost. The ancients sleep beneath earth and ocean, but their dreams flow through us still. As night gives way to light, their stories merge with ours, forming a single, endless narrative. Civilizations rise, fade, and return, not as ruins, but as reminders of what endures. In the hush before sleep, we hear them, the voices of the vanished, whispering softly through time. We were here. We still are.